Welcome to What Moves You, a Speedway Motors podcast for people who love cars. I'm Joe McCullough, and today we're talking with Andy Leach. He's the owner of Cal Automotive Creations and has built cars that have won the Ridler, run at Bonneville, and win awards just about everywhere they go. Our own Jeff Carls joins in on the conversation where we'll talk about car building philosophy, what's in Andy's home garage, and the amazing story of how hard work and dedication have made Andy one of the most influential builders in the country. So I suppose the logical place for us to start is how you got started. How did you first fall in love with cars, and what made you want to do what you're doing?
I don't know. I just always liked making things and figuring out how things work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of always, I just figured it out. I mean, my dad was never the most mechanical guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was always into cars. So I have no schooling in any of this. It's just figure it out, screw something up, and well, that didn't work. So here we go.
Right.
But I think when I got into cars, my dad was always into cars. I grew up playing a lot of sports, and we were down in Lincoln actually for the Cornhusker State Games, and we were driving by a dealership, and there was a 34 Chevy sitting outside, and my dad, as his head spun, the wheel just went to the left, and there we were looking at this Chevy, and from that moment on, that was the fork in the road. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing that I just became really, really interested in. I knew nothing about any of it, but it just lit a fuse. And the cool thing, and Jeff knows about this, is later in life, I guess we just figured this out a few years ago, when Jim Carl started working for me, that Chevy, all the Carl's boys put that car together.
Yeah, it's crazy that car was in both of our family photo albums from the early days of this is a car that we had when Jim was a teenager. It was an old car company car that Dad picked up and did some updating and repair and stuff on, and it was crazy that then you had pictures of the car. It had a better stance. I know that.
I lowered the crap out of it, and then I took my big bug for a ride in the back seat, and it burned all the paint off the fenders. My dad was so pissed. It was, but it looked good.
Exactly. Now I bring you impractically low, which is what just about everything that I own is.
Which is what we've all been doing ever since then.
He had an interest in the shoebox Chevys, the 49 to 54 Chevys. Mm-hmm. And back then you could buy them really cheap. So we'd just go drive around, find a shoebox Chevy and bring it home, and I'd destroy it, and we'd throw that one away, and we'd go find another one. So now in the Midwest, those cars are uber rare because I ruined all of them. So me and Jim, this might go in a little different direction that we might not want it to go, but it's pretty interesting how Jim and I and you too, Jeff, that we have a similar story with our fathers and how we lost them. And Jim and I had a huge a bro moment. I don't know, it's probably, I lose track of time, maybe 6-8 months ago or whatever. And I had to ask him something about, like, do you ever, have these thoughts or feelings or whatever about your dad? And we just stopped, and here's two grown men crying together in the office. And it was really cool. It was just we have so much in common. It's almost scary. And then the whole thing with this 34 Chevy deal and how that started my car career, and it's just pretty cool. So it's a lot can be said for our fathers. They were even though they never met, maybe they did, I don't know, but I think they had a huge they were very similar in the way that we were all brought up, and us as parents now, we need to probably take a look at that and instill all this hot rod stuff or whatever it be into our kids, and hell, the world would probably be a better place. But
it's amazing how just that little bit of wind in the sails can set that course for somebody's whole life, of to have that influence early on, and to be able to see what it is you can do and how that can be a creative outlet.
Right. Yeah, I guess you never know what it'll be that'll spark somebody's interest. But like you said, a little sail of wind will do it.
As we were preparing for this interview, I read your bio on your website, and frankly, I was expecting the, I'm the best builder in the world, and let's bring your dreams to me and let's make your dreams a reality kind of thing that you see on most of those bios. And I was really impressed with the sort of personal story that you told about, basically overcoming everything just because you couldn't stop doing what you loved.
I don't know if it's because I was stubborn or not smart enough to do anything else or what it is, but it's always been, since that 34 Chevy, it's just been cars. And I always say, and Jim, Jeff's brother, will say the same thing, that we're our own worst enemy at this, because you come up with these creative ideas and then it's like, well, how in the hell are you going to make that work? And it's like, why do we do this to ourselves? But that's the whole thing that just keeps driving us, is I guess sometimes trying to do the impossible, and making things look right, even though, I guess, making things look right and simple, even though it's like the furthest thing from simple. I didn't know what else to do other than follow my dreams. And it's pretty crazy how, if you put the time and dedication into it, these people just start like coming to you. Like my first employee, Eric Hansen. Words don't describe Eric, but he was my first employee, and you just kind of show him something and he just takes off. And that's the passion. He's like a big sponge. And all my guys are that way. And, which is pretty cool. And I always say it that, we're all good at like one or two things, and then we suck at about 8 or 9 things. So, but that's what makes the team. And that's where it all, falls together. And a lot of the ideas on these cars and stuff it's from everybody. We might have a certain look that we like, well, obviously, and there's certain looks that we can't stand, so we stay as far away from those as we possibly can. But yeah, it's just a passion thing. I don't know, pretty darn lucky to do what we get to do.
The thing is, with the complementary talent that you've got assembled there at the shop, it's it's just like you said, that's what part of being a team is about. Is it everybody's talents complement each other's, so that you can come in and you guys all converge on these cars, especially when like I saw toward the end of the Model A, everybody, that thing looked like it had ants crawling all over it. This discipline is, this is Paul's jam, this is Eric's jam, and like everybody kind of does their thing, and that's really amazing to see these things kind of work their way up from a set of mock-up rollers that on a table to like, holy crap, now there's a car there.
Well, and you talk about craftsmanship, and I think that that's something that is kind of almost being forgotten. We sort of live in a throwaway society where you use a thing up and then you go get another one, and the general idea of building a thing or fixing a thing and maintaining a thing and sort of having a relationship with a thing is sort of almost being forgotten. And so building cars is a big extension of that. You're inventing something out of nothing in a time when few people are able to do that. And even more so, as a metal shaper, a fabricator and a metal shaper, that's almost kind of a lost art. It's almost like a lost language that few people under the age of 80 know anything about or know how to do. And so in addition to building cars, being able to sort of keep that art form alive is really cool.
I know you brought up Paul's name. Paul's from Australia. Once you meet Paul, you'll never forget him. He's a very, very, he's a great guy, extremely talented. But it's weird how, like, the craftsmanship in Australia is far from, is on extreme different measures as it is here, as far as the sheet metal side of it. They metal finish stuff, and when it's metal finished, I mean, it is like, it's the real metal finish, not this stuff you see on Instagram where somebody slides a DA over it and you can't see the dents and stuff and the hollows and whatnot. But which everybody gets better when you have somebody like that around. And you can say that for Jim too. Jim is a guy that can take almost anything and make it work. I don't know how he does it. Don't tell him I said this, Jeff, but he's pretty amazing.
He's been cleaning up my messes for for the last 30 years, 40 years.
No, it's if it has to work, give it to Jim and he will figure it out. He's gonna cuss at it and get all mad at it and say how stupid it is, but he's got the same drive that we all have, where he's not gonna let it go until he has it figured out and it works. But again, there's the passion thing, and the cars keep getting better, and they're real cars, and that's pretty cool. So when you can make a car that makes a statement and is actually a car that's a real car, that's pretty damn cool.
Right.
And then we have the clients that are actually using them. That's way better than any dumb little trophy that you can win.
I was just going to say that's been a huge shift in the industry, it seems, in the last 10 years. And I think, organizations like Good Guys had a lot to do with that, where you actually have things to do with the car at the event. It's not just, you're not going to go and race your lawn chair all weekend in front of your car and, yell at people to stay away from it. Don't touch it. You go out and you'll beat the hell out of it on the autocross course. You'll go out and, and actually take the car on a reliability run, or drive, God forbid, drive the car to an event. And, that's different than that used to be, especially at the level at which these cars play at. I mean, that's really saying something for somebody to get out and to beat that car up the highway. And I'm thinking like Howard's 62 and how well built and functional that car is. That's just a gorgeous car, and it's all at that level of quality that is usable, which adds a whole other facet to it.
Right. Well, and that's what's cool is we'll just use that car for an example here. I mean, I feel that car top to bottom. And it's the same with, like, let's say the car we just finished, the CUDA. When you have everybody on this team that's so dialed in and all has the same focus of quality, but they take their little part and they do theirs to the best they can, each piece of the puzzle fits together, and that's why that entire car comes together and it works. Because each piece is it's not like, oh, we just took it to a body shop and, man, the outside of that car is really pretty, but the rest of it, man, it doesn't work. So, and that, you know what I mean? I mean, it's each guy has their thing, and there it goes again too, that most of us have this passion that are into cars, that this is our job, but it's more than just an 8 to 5 deal.
You wake up at 2 a.m. and try to figure out how to do the thing that you couldn't figure out at 5:30 the night before. Yeah. Right.
And I think that's something there that you just said that, I don't know, it kind of drives me, is I don't like being told no. So I'm going to figure out how to make that work regardless of whatever it is. And if I can't, Jim's probably going to make it work. So, and if he can't, Eric has these magical hands that I don't know what the hell he does, but he can make anything work. It just, it might not be the prettiest way of him getting it to that thing. He can MacGyver that thing where it looks like a beautiful gem, and it works. So.
Well, and we've sort of started to talk about your philosophy of having to be able to drive the car. It has to work as a car as well as work as a showpiece. Beyond that, it kind of seems like your cars, you look at the checkered past and look at the bubble top and to the far then end of the spectrum, the Bonneville car, you're kind of mixing. It's not just a high-tech new thing that looks like you're trying to make a CUDA look like a McLaren F1. And it's not just a traditional car that has a flathead and wire wheels. You're pulling all of these influences. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I kind of want to talk about that too. I think all of us here at my shop have the same vision for these cars. Keep the car what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a CUDA, 34 Chevy, or whatever it is. Keep that car what it is. I'd be okay if that whole Pro Touring, the wings and the splitters and the added 700 bolts to a car or whatever it is, and would just go away. Because these guys, you see a lot of Camaros being built, and that's cool, but keep the Camaro what it is. Don't build this soulless thing that has this spaceship looking dash and whatnot. A Camaro is a beautiful car, just keep it what it is. And that's what we try to do here, is just refine the car. Even though it's very complicated and the car is probably all cut up and we take a half inch out of this little, I don't know, fender or door or whatever, but we do that to try to visually enhance the proportions, but still keep that car what it is. And again, keep it functional. And that's something to say too, is the whole parts in the industry have gotten a lot better, as far as the quality of parts. And I mean, we order from you guys, like if we don't get a package from you guys on a day, something's wrong, because we have boxes of Speedway stuff showing up every day. So, but the quality of parts has really improved, and we've seen it just in the last 5 years at least. You get to using the same parts on each car because you know that they work in like a certain combo. What I find really interesting right now is the industry in a whole feels like it's really headed back towards a traditional or a timeless look, where you're putting door handles back on.
Yep.
You know, you're not putting these Taurus handles in the side of a car or whatever, you know, just these ridiculous looking things, but you're putting the door handles back on because they work. I had a lot of the clients that we build cars for have obviously built a lot of cars, and they get it. And one of them said one time, like, well, it seems like every guy wants power windows, and that we built the CUDA for. He goes, why would I want those? He goes, my arms work just fine. And it's kind of, it's like, that's perfect, because you don't have to overcomplicate the car. It can look complicated, but don't overcomplicate the car. Just use stuff that you know works, and ultimately that's what makes a better car.
I'm going to put you on the spot and ask if you had to define your aesthetic or the aesthetic of your shop in a few words, a short statement. You could define, like if you look at like Boyd Coddington, you could define the Boyd aesthetic pretty succinctly. Do you have your version of that?
I have this quote that I saw it somewhere a long time ago, and it's always kind of stuck with me, and I don't know if it makes any sense, but it makes sense to me. So I guess aggressive elegance, tire sizes and wheel sizes and the overall stance kind of set the whole mood of the car. From there, the little details kind of work themselves out, but it's all about from A to Z, just the stance, the fit, finish. Try not to make something pop out, because if it's popping out, you don't want somebody focusing on one area of the car. You want you want the car to draw them in, and this could be said for any art form. Let it draw you in, and then you start noticing the little details.
That's one of the things I've noticed with your overall aesthetic, and you talked about it with kind of touching on the Camaro thing. First, do no harm. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And when you guys were building the 40, and I heard that you were chopping a 40 Ford Coupe, that's one of those things. It's like, hold up, wait a minute. That was really pretty damn close, just as the way it came out of the factory. That car is really pretty hard to improve upon the silhouette of that car. And then when I saw the finished product, it's like, wow. I've seen a lot of chopped 40 coupes, and most of the time, it's got a crook here, or a bump there, or a lump there, or it's too sloped on the back of the top. There's a lot of ways to screw that up, and I've seen just about everywhere there was. But that car flows. There's not a visual barb on it that doesn't look like it's right where it belongs. The colors and the finishes and everything, especially the differentials in different finishes of the same hue, the different tones of gold finish and stuff, and that kind of the bronze color that's on that car. I mean, that to me is one of the things that kind of defines the Cal look.
Right. I have a funny story with that you said that, and thank you for saying all those kind words about it. I had wanted to cut the ever-living crap out of that 40 since the day I started on it. And, it was the old, you'd take a photo of a 40 and you'd cut it and tape it back together. And I knew what I wanted to do. And my friend Jason Holland and Nick Hazing, I was hanging around them one day, and I texted them, like, I'm going to wedge section and chop that car. And I remember they both said, don't do it. And they came out to my shop that night, and I had it. But I was like, no, you're not going to tell me no. And I think they came out and I showed them pictures, or maybe I even wedge sectioned the car and even did the top and just kind of clamped it back down. They came out and they were like, holy cow, that does look good. But I always remember, and you just said it too, Jeff, that there's a fine line of sometimes cutting these things and moving stuff. It seems like there's times people do that stuff just to do it with no purpose, or even stepping back and looking at the overall picture. I think I'm a firm believer every car should be wedge sectioned, so but everything has to be moved in relationship. So like the 40 was wedge sectioned, if I remember right, 1.5 inches in the front and 0 in the back. Well, when that wedge was laid out, the A pillar was chopped like 3/8 of an inch, which sounds absolutely ridiculous. It's like, why would you take all that time moving all that structure and cutting everything just to move the A pillar 3/8 of an inch? But yet it's one of those things, just a little tweak here and a little tweak there really softens up the lines and makes the car look like it's going forward and fast. That's the goofy stuff that I guess I take pride in is those little things like, man, if you take a 1/2 inch out of that fender or something, can you imagine what that would do to that line, that light line in that car?
Well, that's one of the things, the restraint to stop at that, because it's just as much work to take a 1/2 an inch out as it is to take 1.5 inches out. And that, I've always equated that to like, a 292 cam is the same price as a 268 cam. Why wouldn't I just buy the 292 cam? It's bigger, right? Bigger is better. And there's so many people that fall into that trick bag, and I think builders kind of sometimes fall into that too. It's like, I'm going to show off my prowess with an English wheel and how well I can TIG weld and hammer finish this metal, but wait. Just because it could be finished and fitted perfectly, but if it didn't add to the aesthetic of the car, then it was kind of all for naught. It becomes one of those things that draws your attention, like, man, that thing would be great if only. And that's where that restraint shows up and says, oh, you know what, that was very intentional, that was very deliberate to do that. And yeah, that's what I love to see when you see one of these cars, and I don't know how much of what's in the shop right now you can talk about, but the one we were looking at the other day, that with the new roof skin and stuff on it, that the stainless roof car.
Oh yes, we can talk about that.
Okay, that little T-Bird, and looking at that mid-50s T-Bird and like not realizing all the little things about those cars that kind of bug you until you see one with all that stuff fixed, and it's like, that should have been that way. That thing should have grew out of the Ford factory that way.
That's probably the perfect car to speak of, about all these little modifications and whatnot, and things that kind of the do's and don'ts. That Ross Myers owns that car. We built Ross, when I was at Troy's, we built Ross Myers the first love car, the Ridler winning 36 3-window. Mm-hmm. I ran into him, I believe it was 1.5 years ago now. First time I've seen him in years, and we got talking, and he took my number, and I thought, oh, that was cool. Talk to Ross. Out of the blue, he texted me one day about this Thunderbird, and it was like, holy cow, a Thunderbird. I've always thought they're kind of, especially that particular year, 50, 55, 56, are a little bit awkward looking. But then he said he wanted to chop it and do like a stainless roof. And at first I'm like, oh, you're like, what? And then, then I call Eric Black. I'm like, all right, dude, you got to put this on paper. He's like, you want to do what? And, that was kind of everybody's first thing. And I said, I know. And then a couple days later, Eric texts or calls, and he's like, dude, this thing's going to be wicked. He sends drawings over, and it's like, man, they should all look like that. But the first thing you think of when somebody says, chop a Thunderbird, it's like, are you out of your mind? You can hardly sit in the damn thing to begin with. And now you're going to chop it? But that there's a perfect example of a car where if you stare at it long enough, you can really pick out the things that bug you and make the soft and subtle modifications, like the wheel, the rear fender or wheel openings, putting a little flare on them that somewhat match the front. And Paul made all those, and they look just phenomenal. But it's like, why doesn't every Thunderbird have that?
Because fender skirts and poodles, fender skirts, poodle skirts, and your fuzzy dice. I mean, that's going to tip people over. It's really like it takes all the things, like all the stuff that was a little wonky with those, and it accentuates the really good, and it downplays what was not not really so great. And when you stand back and look at it, it just looks like it ought to be that way. That was impressive.
Yeah, you don't know why it looks like that, but it looks right. Yeah, and those cars were supposed to be the sports cars and the competitive deal to the Corvette and whatnot. But just softening that roof up, and it's not like it's softened up. I mean, I think we chopped it, 1.25 inches in the back, and then it was more one of those things that looks right than actually taking a tape measure to it. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the rough numbers were 1.25 inches and probably like 3/4 in the front, or 7/8 in the front, something really goofy.
Just enough to make a windshield a nightmare.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't it? If you're gonna do it, really do it. So, but yeah, man, you put that car outside, and it's just like, wow, the lines of that car, it just pops. And yet now we have the task of making the rest of the car follow suit with it. But that's what's kind of fun, is staring at that stuff and just figuring out, all right, well, if we do certain finishes here and a certain color here, and not trying to over exaggerate something, but make it pop in a subtle way. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but that's really kind of what we do. It's just a lot with colors, and we're not, the cars we build are not flashy at all. I don't like the real bold, flashy, in for 6 months, out of style,
Mm-hmm.
right there. We like to do the timeless, or we think we're building timeless anyways. The whole timeless look, why, if a customer's gonna spend any amount of money, why wouldn't you build it for a duration of time versus what's really the flashy thing right now? I mean, you see a lot of that on Instagram and stuff. It's like, wow, that car's cool, but what's that thing gonna look like in like a year? Kind of like, in the 80s, everybody had the tweed interior and the check marks in their door panels, and whatever that whole style was. And now you look at it and you're like, what in the hell were we thinking? And maybe we'll say that again in 20 years. I don't know.
I wanted to talk to you about running at Bonneville because that's like bucket list thing. I don't even want to drive. I just want to crew on the car.
I guess that's what's fun with everything we have going on in the shop. It's a little bit of everything. And then you do the Bonneville stuff, which we're not running the Speed Week this year. We're going to try to run later in the year. But the whole Bonneville thing throws another twist into the rest of the cars that we build, because Bonneville's fun. It's a car that it has to work. It has to be safe. So that automatically has influence on everything else that we do. It's bare bones race car. You're not trying to make a fancy little cover that covers this thing so you can't see it. It's more of a deal where we tried to make the car where it is bare bones, but that part is made in a way where, well, that's pretty damn cool, even though it may be just a different spin on, I don't know, a bracket or whatnot.
It's kind of the ultimate of where form meets function.
Yes, exactly.
You still care about the aesthetic, and you still want the car to be well engineered, but first and foremost, it needs to function, and you need to be able to service it. So between passes, or to do maintenance, or to do whatever, it's got to, and those cars, all of them, I love to look at the McKeekan Streamliner, the McKeekan Schultz Streamliner that's in the museum. That thing is 10 pounds of stuff packed into a 5-pound bag, and it looks like a spacecraft with the body panels off of it. There's a place for everything, and everything's in its place, and to see something that two engineering minds orbited around each other for 10 years or whatever it was that when they refined that car, that's to me the coolest thing about Bonneville, and that there is no accepted convention of like go fast. Well, we got a problem. Figure it out. The thing tries to take off at 175 miles an hour, or whatever. Well, figure it out. There's not a formula that like, okay, well, you go buy this chassis and then you slap this, carbon fiber body on it and you use these guys as engine, and it's a little different than most other forms of motorsport in that respect, is that it's still sort of a frontier of, hey, go knock yourself out. See if you can go fast that way. Maybe nobody's tried that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. There is no formula, and boy, everybody out there has a different theory on it. And you read that rule book, and each section has like a couple sentences or a paragraph on what each individual part of the car has to be, and it's pretty interesting how you interpret it and how I interpret it and how that guy over there interprets it. I mean, it's so far it's different, but that's what's fun about it is you go out there and you look at that streamliner and you're like, wow, that thing's crazy. And how do you package all that crap in there? There's a lot going on to those cars, and it's I recommend anybody that has a chance to go out there, go ahead and go out there, but be under the realization that you're going to be hooked. So you just got a new hobby, and it's expensive. So for anybody that doesn't know anything about it, I think most of us car guys know about it, but if anybody out there doesn't, watch that movie, The World's Fastest Indian. That's got to be like, that sums Bonneville up right there, and the passion that everybody has for it is just, that's exactly what it is, you know. And the cool thing about Bonneville is everybody's out there for the same purpose. And you break down, you know, it's like you're on the damn moon or whatever. And you ain't gonna get no parts, but you just walk over to the next pit and everybody's like, I swear they'd give you a motor or whatever. Everybody's just really cool.
And it's such a great, amazing equalizer. I think that's my favorite thing about being at Bonneville is the guy over there could make $1 million a year. And, you know, when I started going, I was in college, and I think I had, like, I didn't know if I was going to have gas money to get home, but we were all there for the same reason. And in that, for that week, we were united in that. And I think the world could use more of that, you know?
Oh, absolutely. So, what a crazy time we're in. But yeah, let's all just go to Bonneville and it'll make things better.
I wanted to ask you what it was like to win the Ridler.
Everybody says that they have a defining moment in their life that changed their life. And I think that, other than meeting my wife, that is definitely the Ridler thing changed my career.
Yeah.
You know, you said you read my bio, and I mean, that's exactly what it was. I sat there and I had no freaking clue what the hell I was going to do with my life after that ceremony thing was over. It's like, I can't remember if it was $6 or $9 to my name. And it was probably in my pocket. No, I'm serious. I mean, I was a single dad, and I had no idea what the hell was going to happen. And, funny to say, winning a trophy like that just ignited the whole business thing. And I know there's been a lot of people that have tried that, and maybe it didn't work, and I don't know why I got lucky with it, but it did change my life. And then, you know, riding home that next day from Detroit, and my phone's ringing, and it's like, this dude in Nebraska that's not really all that interesting to talk to, and how are you guys getting my phone number, you know?
Right.
Well, that just proves my theory that in a lot of different ways, a great car can change your life. And I think that you say that there's no need for what we do. You know, you don't need a 40 Ford in your garage, but you kind of do, you know?
Well, and that's interesting with some of the clients that we have is, you know, a lot of these guys are successful guys that started a business from ground zero, and cars, that's their drug and their escape. You know, from the daily just grind and stuff. And yeah, we all got our little thing, and for all of us, it's cars.
We're going to post to the toolbox at speedwaymotors.com pictures of all of these cars that we're talking about, and you know, they can be seen at your website too, at calautocreations.com. But the thing that I'm curious about is your personal stable. Do you have cars at home that you use to blow off steam, or that you drive around on the weekends?
Yeah, we have too many cars.
It looks like the GM assembly plant from 1959, I think, is kind of what it looks like, isn't it?
I know, I have a problem with getting those GMs. To me, those are some of the prettiest cars ever made. I don't know why I have to like the biggest damn cars ever made, you know? But it is what it is. Yeah, we have a lot. What do we have? We have a 59 Pontiac wagon. Very interesting story behind it, that it was bought brand new in Cleveland, Ohio, and the guy traded it back in '64 to a Pontiac dealership with like 13,000 original miles or something crazy like that. And they parked it at this Pontiac dealership, and it stayed parked in this wash bay until Pontiac went down in the early 2000s. It sat there the whole time in this wash bay. So the outside's got a little scale here and there and whatnot, but the inside is like brand new. Like the interior is brand new. And that's a fun car. We like to pile the kids and the dogs in, and it just turned 15,000 original miles. And of course, it's sitting way too low, and it looks cool, but rides like crap, but it looks cool. We go get ice cream and whatnot, and the dogs are slobbering all over the back of it and whatnot. But it's fun. The kids love it. And we have a 60 Buick Invicta, a bucket seat car. Came across that one. My friend Boris, that owns Street Machinery in Ohio, tend to buy a lot of cars from him. He came across it and texted it to me, and my wife likes to refer to him as my most expensive best friend. So, but we're building another 60 Buick, so it's really interesting. The one we're building is for Georgie Lycostas out of Chicago, and that one's all cut up and wedge sectioned and moved around, and then you park the two together and you're like, wow, that's what a stock one looks like. But that's interesting in itself because like everybody knows what a 32 Ford looks like, and but nobody knows what a 60 Buick looks like, but it just looks right. So the plan eventually is to park both of them together and see the differences. And my wife has so the 60 Buick is technically my wife's, and then we have a 54 Caddy convertible that she likes to drive a lot. We have a 59 Olds that I really like that car. It just kind of sits on top of the rack. It doesn't move very often, but it's a really neat car, another low mile car. Yeah, I like the big boats for some reason. There was and I think, Jeff, you probably know Don Beeson.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
From back in the day. He had a red 59 Olds. And that car always made an impression on me. So I always wanted one of those and came across this one, and that's how it ends up. And then after getting to talk to him one time, he goes, that car started as a blue and white one. I'm like, that's the same damn car I have. So it's just kind of interesting how that relates. Yeah, now I have a little shop beater. I bought it from Boris, a little 54 Ford. And I just did a really quick makeover on it. And again, it's laying like an inch off the ground, all on coilovers, but that thing is so much fun to drive. And you don't have to worry about it. It's a patinaed truck. Don't have to worry about it. It's kind of fun. We go from one extreme with these cars where you got to be really careful with them to another one where you just drive the crap out of it. Who cares what happens? It's just fun.
I wanted to talk about that truck because I saw that on your Instagram, and it's a patina truck, but it's a pretty nice truck, and it just looks so cool. It sits just right at the gray. They look like magnesium Americans, whether they're painted or not. It looks like real old fuzzy magnesium. And it just looks so cool. And then you post a picture of it hooked onto the trailer with like a bunch of gravel on it or something. Like, wow, I guess you really do use it as a shop truck.
We beat the crap out of that truck. But, I don't know. It's just one of those, I feel that body style is really coming on strong. And I think you can make anything cool if it's sitting low enough with the right tires and wheels on it. And absolutely. I wanted to really put magnesium wheels on it, but it's like, this is a 64 Ford. I can't put magnesium wheels on it. I mean, you drive it every day just with the maintenance and whatnot of keeping it up. So yeah, those are literally just the cheap Americans. And Randy down at Wheel Tech, I told him, like, beat the crap out of these things, So they were like bead blasted with like gravel and came up with this coating. And I go, dude, throw hammers at them and stuff, dent them up. I want them to look old. And he came up with a coating it looks like magnesium. I mean, it's pretty cool. So. But yeah, that truck, man, we use it, and that's what it's for. That's what all these cars are for. Why build a car if you can't use them? You built it up to that in the first place. You can fix whatever you have to.
Right. Yeah. The Jay Leno mentality of, restore this into a 900-point car and then drive it till it's about a 400-point car and redo it again.
Right.
Well, I'm going to majorly shift gears on you here, and you own a business in what is famously a very intense and time-consuming field. How do you find a balance between your work and the rest of your life?
That's an interesting question. And my wife, Annalie, gets a lot of that credit. Not a lot, all of it, because she's the brains behind it and the one that has taught me that, you have to balance stuff. She has her own business, and we have 4 kids, and our life is just as crazy as anybody else's. And yeah, there's definitely a balance there. And the Model A that we finished in 17 was the last car that we did as an all-out, like, time doesn't matter. I'm gonna sleep for 17 minutes and get back up and work for another 23 hours, and she's the one that really brought that to my attention. And for the most part, we'll work a few hours overtime here and there, but for the most part, we're 8 to 5. Focus, put the hard 8 hours in. When you're here, you get the same amount done.
Right.
You really do. Don't kill yourself. It makes for a better car. You go home, you're happy, your family's happy, everything around you's happy. So, doesn't mean we're not thinking about this stuff all throughout the night, but
right.
There's definitely a balance. And I was just talking to somebody a little bit ago about they were like, well, what do you do to relax? And I'm like, well, I think about that 62 bubble top that I want to build someday. And it's like, why the hell do I go home and I think about cars all day long, but I can't get that car out of my head, and that's how I relax and fall asleep.
Well, see, that's the difference between doing what's your passion and welding little stainless doodads together in a production job. Too, you don't think about that when you go home, and when we're immersed in this industry, I don't think any 3 of us ever really feel like we're doing work. Because it is something that comes naturally, and if you weren't doing it here, you would be doing it, under your own steam for your own stuff. So it's kind of that's you almost have to have somebody with the perspective to say, hey, do you realize that you've been at this for 16, 18 hours? Why don't you knock it off? Why don't you think about something else? What do you do? Do you fish? Would you, like, like, 'cause it can consume you if you don't have that perspective.
So what's next? What's the next big thing that you're excited about?
We got a lot of cool things going on in the shop. And I guess that's what's kind of cool is it's not one car or one body style or one look. Even though it's our look that we put on each one of these. Got everything from, I guess you could say, a street rod to the muscle car stuff to race car stuff to we have one coming up that's I don't know how much I want to say about it, but it's gonna I don't know how the hot rod world will take it. All the drawings are done. I think you've seen it, Jeff, but it's a really aggressive handmade deal where everything's moved around. It's all just Eric Black drawings right now, but the thing is so bitchin'. I mean, you just look at the thing and you're just like, it's hard to describe. That's going to be a really, really cool car. Really cool car. And again, I don't know exactly how it's going to go in the hot rod world, but hey, maybe the hot rod world's ready for a change.
I think that they are, and I think that we have had this conversation in other podcast recordings, but I think that people are ready to look outside the box a little bit. And just because you've always been a 32 Ford guy doesn't mean that a well-built, good proportion car could be a hot rod. A hot rod is, what is it, Wally Park said, modified for speed, better performance or better appearance. So anything can be a hot rod as long as those two things are what you build it for.
I think that's spot on, and I think you're 100% right that it's time for a little bit of a change. It's funny how all this stuff goes in cycles. It's like, the 32s will never go out of style, but man, there's sure a lot of 32s out there. And then a lot of Camaros.
Well, and and maybe that's where some of the outlandish stuff kind of comes from, is that, if you're starting with a canvas that there's really nothing new under the sun to do with that car, or modifications that you could do that somebody hasn't seen, or whatever, that I think that's when people really start to color maybe a little too far outside the lines, and you get some really interesting results. But yeah, the starting with different rolling stock, a different vehicle to start with is refreshing.
Oh, it's pretty cool, and it keeps you. It kind of sparks new ideas, and I don't know a whole lot about those. We'll just say those cars, but we're sure learning here on the fly, and it's pretty interesting seeing the little the little details and little influence those cars can have in, say, let's say a 32 or a muscle car or something, a new spin on things. So, which I think, that's always the game here, is everybody's looking for the new little spin, the new little twist, and somebody will do it, and then everybody's going to do it. And that's what's kind of fun.
Thanks to Andy Leach for being our guest today, and thanks to all of you for listening to What Moves You, a Speedway Motors podcast. Visit the toolbox at speedwaymotors.com for the photos we referenced in today's episode. Email the podcast at podcast@speedwaymotors.com. If you like what you heard, tell a friend where to find us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.